Crouch. Bind. Set.
Joe presents the House of Rugby, together with Guinness.
Well, standing above us is Umeshima Denamakoto, who is, would you believe it, a Japanese god of war. And I'm always loath to bring war into a sporting context, but this weekend it feels spicy, I think it's fair to say. England against South Africa in the Rugby World Cup Final 2019, and our old friend Elma Smit has come back to have a chat in the sunshine.
It's actually gorgeous. The last few days in Tokyo have been so perfect, and it's also quiet.
Yes.
It just feels like there's a bit of
calm before the storm. Welcome to another of our mini-pods here on House of Rugby, brought to you by Joe, together with our very good friends at Guinness. And we've had so much fun. We've had so many amazing experiences out here in Japan. But fundamentally, we have now got what we all came for, which is a World Cup final with your team in it and my home country in it. And it's beautiful how this has sort of come together, really. How are you feeling in advance of Rugby World Cup Final 2019?
I was so proud on Sunday at that semi-final, when the final whistle blew, that I just dissolved into like a fit of hysterical kind of tears. But
was that because you'd never get the 80 minutes of your life back again, having sat through that? Or was
it was so painful to watch, and then the relief kind of breaks you after all that tension. And when Kolisi flashed up on screen, it really kind of hit me. That he's the captain who will lead the Springboks into this final. And it is a very personal moment, like a big personal moment for him, but also for a very, very large number of people back home.
Can you give us a bit of context around the importance of Kolisi, not only within South African rugby, but within South Africa?
Yeah, so I have cried every day this week watching videos of people singing, kids at his old school chanting his name. Like
I saw that.
Kids.
Unbelievable. SIYA.
People singing in shopping centres, people singing in parking lots. The groundswell of support has been, even though I've been very removed from it and in Japan for 7 weeks, it's unmistakable that there's something really special happening back home. And it has taken hold of probably the largest number of South Africans ever, more so than in '95, more so than in 2007.
Really?
This is definitely bigger. It's a bigger moment. It's big because a few weeks ago, South Africa went through a very bad time when another incident of femicide grabbed the headlines. And to show you how different these Springbok rugby players are, Makazole Mapimpi, when he scored his tries in that 6th September Springbok warm-up match against Japan, had an armband that said R.I.P. Nene. Nene Mrwetyana was raped and then murdered at the post office by a post office employee, and she was a student that showed great potential at UCT, the University of Cape Town. And for a rugby player to acknowledge something that is a broader conversation in South Africa about men standing up and saying the way we treat vulnerable people in our society is not okay, is proof that these players, this generation, they know and realize and appreciate the role that they play in South African society as role models and as people who speak out on more than just rugby issues. Sia is important, but there are a lot of players in that team who have important stories, and a lot of players in the broader Springbok kind of, not just the group here, but the group of Springbok players who've come through the ranks in the last 5 years. Lizo Koboga being another one who has an insane story. So it's a pretty big moment for players who represent more than just rugby, represent more than just the Springbok badge, but also South Africa and the hopes and dreams that people hold for a better future.
So that is incredibly powerful. I mean, it sort of has a little feel of '95 to it, in that there is a much bigger play for the team
Yeah.
to aim at, rather than just a sporting triumph.
I mean, I did an interview with Sia for a cooking show back home a few years ago,
Right.
where he told me about his bursary that he got, so that kind of lifted him out of going to an average township school into Grey.
Yeah.
And he said he got to the hostel and the teacher showed him his room, and there were two single beds in the room. And he said to the teacher, "Who sleeps here?" And she said, or he, I can't recall, "This is your bed and then that will be your roommate's." And at home he was sleeping on pillows on the ground. No one had their own bed in their household. And
Wow.
here he was, 12, 13 years old with a bed to himself. And he said that wasn't even the best thing. He had borrowed shoes before. He had played tryouts in boxer shorts because he didn't have rugby kit. But he'd never owned a pair of socks. And when he opened the cupboard, there was a box of socks there.
Really. I mean, it's unbelievably powerful, isn't it?
This is so big because of so many people in South Africa really battling for simple things.
Yeah.
And he's managed to transcend
To do
that.
it. Like a little hug to start these things. We're meant to be building up to
told
a
you.
ferocious rivalry, and instead you're sort of making it quite emotional.
I've been in tears every day this week because I've just been seeing all these stories and
Yeah.
hearing people talk about, you know, interactions they've had with him, and also seeing people who would not normally care about rugby being really invested in this,
Yes.
and not invested in a "we'll only love you if you win" way.
Yeah.
Invested in a "we are really proud of you.
Yeah.
Look at you. Look at where you are."
I was talking to Matthew Pearce last night, who said he reckons 30 million South Africans will tune in
Yeah.
to watch. Is that a conservative estimate? Do you think
No, I think
South
that's-
Africa will stop
Yeah.
to watch Rugby World Cup Final?
It will
2019?
literally grind to a halt. It's pretty like goosebump stuff thinking
Yeah.
about that. But there will be more people watching this than I think anything in South Africa's history.
That's extraordinary.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about some of the other characters. I mean, Sia Kolisi is an inspiration, but tell us about some of the other people who perhaps we might not have heard quite as much about, like Ikanam or
Yeah. So Beast is a
Tendai and
is a
Mtawarira.
great character. Only for, you know, if only for the fact that he's been a long-standing servant of Springbok rugby.
Yeah.
And a lot of people have watched the call that Sia got from President Cyril Ramaphosa, the FaceTime
Yes.
message from
Yes.
the president. When Beast played his 100th test, it was in Bloemfontein.
Yeah.
I've worked with the South African Rugby Players Organisation over the last few years quite closely, and I got a call from the CEO, Eugene Henning, and he said, "Let's do something nice for Beast. Let's
Yeah.
see what we can do."
Yeah.
And I gave his wife a call, and I said, "What does Tendai like?" And she said, "Well, he likes basketball
Right.
outside of rugby. He likes
Quite a presence at
basketball.
the hoop, wouldn't it, if he needed to?
Loves basketball. I think it's the Chicago Bulls, but I might be wrong.
Righto.
He loves all things tech. He's like a real gadget guy.
Yep.
And he loves red velvet cupcakes.
Right.
So I said, "Listen, wow, it's beautiful here.
Unbelievable.
There's nothing technological that I can buy him that he probably doesn't have already. And I'm not going to get a signed basketball shirt anytime soon.
Right.
And I'm also a little worried about sending 100 red velvet cupcakes to the Springbok Hotel, only because..."
Performance,
You
elite
know.
athletes.
So we kind of scratched our head for a bit more. And then she said she'll have a think, and she texted me a few hours later, and she said, "You know what would mean a lot to him?" Because he was born in Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
A message from the president. And I went, "Sure, I mean, I've got him on speed dial. Let me just call up the press." And we threw out lines in every direction. We literally started brainstorming who we could get to.
Yeah.
And with the help of a number of people, this was definitely only because as soon as you say Tendai Mtawarira, as soon as you say Beast in South Africa, people's faces light up, and we managed to get the president to call him. and say,
Wow.
good luck, congratulations, thank you for your service.
And what was Tendai's reaction?
Oh, he was just a classic beast. He was just so humble and sweet and grateful. And
What is it about him that gives him such incredible buy-in? I can't get over. I mean, we're meant, as I say, we keep meaning to build up to this enormous game. We're in about the most tranquil place I think we've been in 3 weeks in Tokyo.
this is spectacular.
Absolutely incredible.
It's
Really
so beautiful.
sensational.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about why he gets such phenomenal buy-in and why every time he gets the ball, arigato,
Everyone
arigato,
cheers.
arigato.
Bees.
Yeah, what is it about the man that gets that buy-in?
He is the gentlest giant who has just worked so tirelessly for so long. He's played in South Africa his entire career, you know. He's so well loved for the guy he is, both on and off the field, and I think he really is an amazing role model. Just such a good-natured, humble, real guy.
Yeah.
He's just literally one of the most humble, cuddly, nicest people in real life. So when South Africans meet him, I promise you no one will have a bad word to say about the guy because he's always the same. He's always good-natured. He's always keen for a chat. And the way that he works on the field and the kind of service that he's given to South African rugby for how long he's been around, he's just absolutely, you know, he's really pretty iconic.
Which is a measure of the man and entirely deserved for everything that he's achieved. Can I ask you about, from two guys who are, I'm not going to juxtapose them, but obviously there's so much love for Sia and for Beast. Faf seems to be getting quite a lot of
Flack?
Well, flack is one way of putting it, yeah. As is Villy LaRue. Both of them have been obviously plying their trade in England of late, so we know them well.
Yeah.
Why?
Because South Africans knew a different Faf. When Faf was playing at the Lions,
right, it was
game
RUGBYJOE,
plan was
yeah.
just, it's a different, you know. And I think that all of this focus, all of the emphasis, the game plan, with so much attention being directed at Faf, that stuff fuels him.
So he loves it?
I believe that is what drives him, what makes him better is when there is so much attention, when there is so much scrutiny. He revels in that. That's where he lives, that's where he thrives.
He's going to play out of his skin
He
this weekend,
is
then, if that's
going
something
to
go by.
be, absolutely, there's going to be like 3 of him on that pitch.
Right, good
Because
news.
the bigger the occasion, the more the attention, the more the focus, the more Faf you'll get.
Right. And what about Villy, who's such a natural, such a talented player, and yet possibly hasn't been on his toes throughout the course of this tournament? Has he got that game, do you think, coming this weekend, or is there are there one or two concerns back home about
a lot of people
his role in the team?
A lot of people are expressing concerns. He's probably the player getting the most criticism because in the case of Faf, I think a lot of people realise the, you know, game plan is, you know, it's really clear if you look at the stats. If you're kicking that
40 minutes
often,
and ball in the air.
Yes, then obviously that's the plan. With Villy, I think a lot of the criticism is more levelled at execution.
Yep.
But he's also kind of always been that player.
Yes.
So Rassie is picking him and is sticking with him
Because of what he can
knowing
do.
that.
Yeah.
And clearly feels like that is justified.
Yep.
Rassie is also the coach that got the team here. So at this stage, I think everyone is affording them the space and said, okay, well, then go out there and show us. And definitely a lot of criticism, probably the most of it aimed at Villy.
Yeah.
But I also don't know if it's going to bother him that much.
Right.
Honestly.
Just gets on with it.
Yeah.
You imagine not only South Africa, but actually also England. I think the teams in the final have been extremely good at shutting out the outside noise. So I know Owen Farrell has deleted Instagram off his phone while he's out here. They're just quite happy doing their own thing in a way that I think possibly, 8, 12 years ago, there was a lot. It's almost easier to escape the noise now than it was 8 years ago.
Because it's mostly digital noise. I don't feel
and also because
here
possibly they're much more conscious of it.
Yeah, but also here in Japan, I feel like unless you go looking for it, you're not going to be smothered by rugby.
Very true.
You know,
Yes.
it's a very different environment to be playing in than if this was back in England in 2015 or if this was in New Zealand in 2011.
Yeah.
I think it would have felt very different.
Yes.
You have to really kind of actively go seek out that pressure digitally, or be milling about in a fan zone or at the Rugby World Cup megastore or at Yokohama Stadium. But Tokyo is so large, and so buzzing. It just kind of swallows everything.
Yeah.
You know, the noise just overwhelms it.
If South Africa are going to win on Saturday, where do they believe it's going to come from? How are they going to beat an England side that not only downed the All Blacks but took them apart?
I think that the Springboks are only going to win by playing their own game and playing it harder than ever before.
Yeah.
Obviously, they are the underdog going into this. I don't think anyone considers the Springboks favourites.
Yeah.
But I don't think that bothers them. I don't think that would lead to a change in tactics. I don't see Rassie Erasmus. I mean, he's obviously not made any team kind of things, but I don't anticipate a huge kind of tactical shift.
You don't think they'll do a sort of rope-a-dope?
Rassie
I wonder
is
if
also,
everyone's laying a trap.
there is this the narrative kind of among rugby fans back home about Rassie Erasmus and the way he coached the Cheetahs 2005 and 6, where he had the lights on top of the stadium roof and all of those weird things. So there is also a bit of belief back home from people saying he is a tactically astute coach. He's definitely going to have something up his sleeve. I don't know.
What it felt like in the semi-final against Wales is that both of those sides were playing not to lose, whereas in the England All Black game they were both playing to make the final. And I just wonder, how does Rassie get the team to shift into that mindset of, guys, we've got to play to win this thing, let's not just hang in there.
But do they?
Well, do they? Hello?
That's the question here. Is that South Africa's style of play?
What, just to hang in there and pinch it?
Well, I don't know if they're going to out All Blacks the All Blacks or
I think
out
England
England. You know?
I think England will not find the gain line as easy to dominate in the way that they did against New Zealand. I was astonished. Every single contact, England went through it, 2 extra metres, ball on the plate and off you go. And I think South Africa will pick them up, they'll put them back, they'll hit them harder, they'll hit them earlier.
That's the thing. So it is a pretty different challenge, but I think that it's probably sets it up nicely from a narrative perspective to have 2 polar opposite semi-finals in terms of style and approach.
Yeah.
And also in the kind of energy. I felt like the Springboks Wales one was kind of a conserving approach, where the other one was all out, just high octane.
Unbelievable.
The thing is, this is a final. I don't anticipate it being a beautiful spectacle of, try-scoring finesse.
So when Rassie sets out his game plan and how he visualises that South Africa are going to win the trophy, what is he going to see? Is it going to be an arm wrestle for 60 minutes, a try, a penalty, whatever it is? I mean, I can't envisage he's going to see it with 3 scores clear with 60 minutes to go, 20 minutes to go.
No, much like the team selection this week, he's been pretty straight up about who his team is.
Yeah.
And I think he's also been really consistent in how they play.
Yeah.
And I don't anticipate a coach of his caliber to now start making, crazy moves in the week of a Rugby World Cup final.
Yeah.
I feel like we're not going to be as surprised as we might hope or dream.
Yes.
I think it's just going to be South Africa doing what they do the best.
Yeah.
Playing as much of that as they can.
Yeah.
Obviously, massive battle in the air. I think the line-out's going to be phenomenal kind of battle within a battle.
Yep. Do you think the South African line-out can get to England in a way that England got to the All Blacks?
Yeah. Remember, we hadn't lost a line-out in, I don't know, the first, and I think we lost the first one in the semi-final. I can't exactly recall the stats now. I'd have to go check, but they were like 37 from 37 after, the quarters. And what was interesting when I spoke to a bunch of, kind of big name former players earlier this week, and we got them to select a tournament 15, so Rugby
Yes.
World Cup 15 for Rugby World Cup Daily, the show that I do for World Rugby. And
Yeah.
they all picked a South African lock.
Interesting.
Not one of them picked the same one.
Righto. Okay.
So people like Lawrence Delalio
Yeah.
and Brian O'Driscoll
Yeah.
picked
I've seen enough in the engine room across the board.
reserve locks.
Wow.
So that tells you that they have so much respect for even the locks who are not starting in the
Yes.
Springbok line. They would pick the Springbok locks on the bench
Yeah.
for a Rugby World Cup 15. Lawrence Delalio picked Franco Mostert
Right.
for his overall.
So there's obvious strength and depth.
So whereas a lot of people picked Morrow,
Yeah.
phenomenal player,
Yeah.
the Springboks, I think, have 4
Yes.
that
Yep.
can compete.
So here's another question, and this is defined always by outcome. But one of the things that's been quite noticeable about England is that, particularly in the last 6 months, they've begun to look like a team of champions. Obviously, that's influenced by beating the All Blacks, etc. But you look at the way Maro carries himself, and the way that Owen speaks, and the way that Ben Youngs has really almost reached another level in terms of form, but also his leadership as well. You can visualise England as world champions, and I believe that that's what they're envisaging as well. Do you get that same sense of, I don't call it destiny, but that same assured conviction that this is what is meant to be from within South Africa, or do you think there is an element of, wow, we've made the final?
There is definitely an element of, wow, we've made the final. Because remember where we were in 2016 and 2017.
Lost to
this
Italy.
is pretty, these are some dizzying heights. We took 50 from the All Blacks more than once in a year. So this is huge. Just making the final is huge. But it's also very South African to make a final you have no business to be in, and then go on and win it by a drop goal, which is the margin, I think.
Do you think it'll
see
come
this
down to
week.
3?
Yeah, I have a feeling it might.
Interesting.
If South Africa have, if they're in the game,
Yeah.
I don't see it being a massive blowout one way or another.
Yeah.
Only because of the way that South Africa plays.
Yes.
But there is definitely a sense of destiny. There is definitely,
within South Africa.
There is a huge expectation, not only I think among the players, but also the broader kind of rugby public in South Africa. There is a huge feeling that this is a team that has something. There is something in the water here. There is definitely something going at the moment where I can totally see them winning it, and all of us looking back and going, we felt it. There was something about the chemistry. These guys really love spending time together. They really enjoy each other's company. They're honestly enjoying going to work.
Yeah.
It's not just I get to play for the Springboks, me. There is definitely an immense sense of cohesion and purpose and destiny here.
Yes. We had quite an interesting week last week, obviously around the All Black game, with Kirsty Stanway from Sky Sports. Did you see any of that?
Yeah.
What was quite clear is that there wasn't a huge amount of sort of desire to watch English rugby or European rugby or Six Nations in New Zealand. And I sort of wondered whether that had an impact in just the general mood, not within the team and not within Hansen, but within the general mood of All Black fans coming into that game. There was perhaps a little bit of, if this is the semi-final, we'll go to the final.
Yeah.
In South Africa, what is the general impression of this England team right now?
Loads of respect.
Really?
Yeah, I think that there's plenty of respect. We saw our own boys play against the All Blacks in the opening match of the tournament. We've seen them play against the All Blacks earlier this year.
Yeah.
For England to for England to obviously outclass the All Blacks like that.
Yes.
Was a phenomenal sight. It was just a really enjoyable rugby match.
Were South Africans cheering for England, or did they want to face New Zealand in the
I
final?
don't think that South Africans had incredibly strong opinions either way.
Right,
I honestly,
very diplomatic.
between my friends and the people I know and kind of social media, I didn't sense an overbearing kind of one way or the other sentiment. It took me a while to kind of figure out what I wanted.
Yeah.
I couldn't even I felt like, let's see what they dish up, and whoever is the most deserving team, good on you.
Very reasonable, yeah.
And I do believe that England deserved to win that. They tactically outplayed the All Blacks.
Yeah. What worries you, if anything, about this England side?
The way they played against the All Blacks, when you look back at it now, is incredibly intimidating.
Yeah.
You know, the clarity, the dedication, you know, tactically, just the way they went about it. And if it didn't work, it could have backfired quite badly. I thought that it was a very gutsy move, and the only way it would work was to have full buy-in from everyone and every player literally smashing himself in that game. We asked Mario Itoje afterwards to record stuff with us for Rugby World Cup Daily.
Yeah.
And he was speaking, but you could see that he was just absolutely spent.
Yep.
There was nothing left.
Yep.
I mean, I think that was a performance, an individual performance for the ages.
Yep.
I mean,
there were several, actually.
But people are going to watch that Mario Itoje performance back a few years from now and go, Mario from that game.
Yes. I think that is a worry from an England perspective, is can they get back to the levels that they performed against the All Blacks? And there is I don't know
fair
if
question.
You've seen the Rising Sun stuff with England.
Yeah.
There's a line in that from Eddie Jones saying that we had guesstimated we would play the All Blacks, and we've had 2.5 years
to plan for that
game.
Yeah.
And the articles that have been written are questioning whether, having got through that,
there's enough left now.
Is there enough left now?
A bit like how Japan played their game of the tournament the week before they played South Africa.
Yes.
Did England play their game of the tournament too early? Did they peak too soon?
Yes.
But would you rather kind of, you know, from a South African perspective, you don't want them to pitch up and be flat in a final. You want them to pitch up and be that team. I don't think anyone in South Africa wants them to come in there, you know, arrogant and overconfident and.
You want a team to win the World Cup, not a team to blow it.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And actually, all the messages that James Haskell was in there this week, and all the messages and the atmosphere and what he saw suggested that actually England they're still doing that. They've come into the tournament and they've progressed since their ride, which I presume was always part of the plan. It is interesting when you track the form of England and South Africa over the last 18 months or so, in a way that Ireland got to number one and then couldn't sustain it. And the All Blacks were trying to find, almost trying to develop their game, but possibly did it in not the correct manner, with the Moang and the Barrett and Scott Barrett in at 6, etc. What is it about South Africa? What's been the biggest progression, do you think, in their recent success? What has Rassie done to get them where they are?
Well, he's clearly just a really direct communicator. From what everyone has said, he talks to you straight up, is very honest, very open, very direct about where you fit into his plan.
Yeah.
And has maintained that level of integrity throughout, which generally is the thing that coaches struggle with.
Yeah.
Because when times get tough, what's happened under previous coaches is that the narrative would suddenly shift, or they would suddenly have a huge change of heart in their opinion on one or two players or on a style of play even.
Yes.
Whereas under Rassie, there has been an immense amount of consistency. And the thing that South African rugby has classically been built on, forward dominance, the pack, the line out, the scrum and the line out, but the pack really, they have been incredibly solid. Their stats have been consistent. We've consistently had 2 front rows that you could interchange without a moment's notice and a doubt. Same with the lock pairing. And so under Rassie, what we have seen is solidifying depth in 2 key areas and consistency. which really, I mean, for all of the talk of Rassie Erasmus spending all night doing tactical analysis and, you know, kind of coming up with crazy, smart, super detail level plans, much the same as I think John Mitchell and Eddie Jones would be doing.
Yeah.
A lot of what South Africa, I think, has gotten right over the last 2 years, the very simple basics, and doing that incredibly well.
Yeah. I'm going to ask you a really cruel question because it's, you have to wait and see, but if South Africa do win it, what will the reaction be when they take the Webb Ellis Cup home?
It'll be bigger than anything.
Will it really?
Yeah, it will be really, really big. Because of how much South Africa has battled on other fronts, particularly this year.
Yeah.
It's been a really tough year from a political perspective. It's been a really tough year economically speaking. It's been a tough kind of 2-3 year period.
Yeah.
And when the Springboks were at their lowest ebb in 2016-17, it was a massive downer to not have a sporting success to kind of fall back on and draw from. And South Africa draws on that, I think, a lot more than other societies. Even people who are not, you know, serious rugby noses will find inspiration and will grab hold of a moment like this because of the individual stories of people like Sia.
Yes.
Overcoming so many odds. Literally going to bed hungry, literally not having shoes, literally being as down and out as you almost could be.
Yeah.
And for him to come here, if the Springboks do win this World Cup, I think it'll be the perfect fairy tale.
Yeah.
There is almost no greater kind of single accomplishment. It would elevate him, but also this team.
What has been fascinating about this conversation is that obviously being embedded in England and reading all the coverage, having spoken to you, what you've got is the emotion of South Africa and the bigger picture against the team that is absolutely firing all cylinders. And it's going to be fascinating to see how those two sort of setups collide.
And that's what I think makes a final so powerful. In a final, it doesn't matter what happened in the semi-finals.
Yeah.
In a final, it doesn't matter what happened over the last 4 years.
Yeah.
In a final, it almost doesn't matter where you came from until you walk onto that pitch, until you cross that white line.
Yeah.
Nothing matters. All that matters is right there and then.
You're going to stick with South Africa by 3?
I'm going to stick with South Africa by 3.
Okay. I'm going to agree to disagree.
No, it's a fair call. It's the smart call.
And you'll be taking a handkerchief to the final either way?
I'm going to be crying either way.
Right, okay.
I think the occasion's going to be massive. And I feel like England would be deserved winners.
Yeah.
Like I don't think I'll feel sad or robbed if England wins. I think we would all applaud the performance that they put in at this World Cup.
Yeah.
And so if they win, I think it would be fair.
We're back at the God of War. I don't think war is appropriate for this weekend, but here is to the Warriors that take to the field.
Yes.
May the best team win, and may there be a wonderful story come full time. Thank you, Elma.
Thank
Always having a
you.
chat. Thank you so much.
You've been watching the House of Rugby on Joe, together with Guinness. Drink responsibly. Visit drinkaware.co.uk for the facts.